Hey, I'm Daniel. This is Russell, and we're from Parkway Collegiate. This is our temptation series as we talk about how you face temptation in the world around you.
Okay. So since this is a temptation series, we really have to establish where temptation comes from, and that brings us to sin.
Yeah.
And obviously the beginning parts of Genesis. Now this story, we all know it, but I would say one of the issues is it doesn't seem real for us. It seems kind of like a kiddie story, and it's not, because it's a story and a fact that influences us every day. So Daniel, take us out. How does the story in Genesis really explain temptation?
So in Genesis, it talks about the creation of the heavens and the earth. It talks about in the beginning, and it talks about the way the world was. God created the heavens and the earth. God created this place called the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was a place on earth where man walked with God. It was perfection. Man fell from that. In Genesis chapter 3, it talks about the fall of man. Basically, when man, Adam, and Eve chose their will over God's will. And it was through temptation that they came to this point. Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 through 19 talk about the different consequences of sin.
Side effects almost.
The side effects,
Yeah.
absolutely. Things like the cursing of the serpent, where he would have to crawl around on the ground. It talks about the enmity that he would feel between woman and the serpent, how her seed and his seed would how there would be strife between them, thus explaining why women hate snakes.
And me, but
And you, yeah.
don't judge me.
And it also talks about how because from dust, man came from dust, we shall return to dust, and how we have to toil for food.
Basically, if you're going to put it in everyday terms, it explains why everything is broken.
Everything's broken
Yeah.
because of sin.
Exactly why relationships don't work, why everything in the world doesn't work. It's why if you ever woke up that day and you feel like, hey, things just aren't working, it's because they're not. It's because sin makes them not work, people and everything else. Okay. So where else does that take us?
So, because we know that there's sin, I guess the next step would be to talk about the law.
Okay.
What is the law?
Depends on definitely which way you discuss it, because the law has a lot of functions, but I would say the one that's most relevant to us is in Romans.
Okay.
You find in Romans 7, Paul talks about the law really, above all else, it shows our sinfulness.
Right.
It is basically the proof that we have sin. Like we always think of, okay, this commandment I've broken, this commandment I've broken, and you almost have regret that commandment is there.
Right.
But really, that commandment was just showing that you have
Sinned.
sin.
So
Yeah.
basically, the law didn't create sin. The law defined what sin was, so we would know what sin is.
It's almost like it provides the fence
Right.
around the yard, or it is the diagnosis of the disease, more so than the actual problem. It just shows that we actually have the problem.
Right.
So the question, I think, is where you go now that you have that information. The biggest question of the entire Bible and of our society overall is, how does Jesus relate to this? If this is what the Bible is all leading up to, it's leading up to Jesus, how is Jesus the answer to this issue of sin and brokenness and temptation?
So, for that, we can kind of we can go to Romans chapter 5. There's a comparison of Adam and Jesus. In Romans chapter 5, verses 12 through 17, it talks about, because of Adam, because of the sin of Adam, we live in a fallen world.
Right.
But we're reconciled, we're justified through a single man, Jesus. One to one, one versus one.
Direct comparison of them.
Direct comparison,
And
absolutely.
it never mentions in there the law, not in that
Right.
section. It doesn't, yeah. We'll get to that later on.
Yeah.
Next week.
Right. So just real fast, in verse 15, it mentions, for by the transgression of one, the many died. Much more did the grace of God and the gift by the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, abound to many. His free gift of salvation, reconciled
Absolutely.
the sin that entered into the world.
So I guess you could wrap this up. But the reason why we want to talk about this week, why we wanted to dedicate an entire week to this topic is we both believe that before you can deal with temptation on an individual basis, this temptation, that temptation, we'll cover those in the weeks to come, you have to come to grips with the weight of how much sin just challenges you every day, how much of a big deal it is. And once you come to that conclusion, you understand how much Jesus saved you from and how, in all reality, He is so much of the answer to temptation that
Right.
we will come back to. What are some of the temptations that we're planning on talking about this week?
So, over the course of the series, we're going to cover things like how can you be tempted through achievement, idolatry?
Yeah.
How can you be tempted through materialism? Or how can you be tempted in legalism? I think
Yeah.
that's going to be a great one.
Yeah, what can I do to achieve God
Exactly.
loving me? Yeah, that's a good one we need to cover.
And then what? Let's see, temptation in relationships.
Talk
So
about that one. That's right.
yeah. So a bunch of different ways that you can face temptation in this world today, and we're going to cover those over the next few weeks.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be good.
Come up and see us. We'll be looking forward to covering these. We'll be doing this for quite a while, so jump in, come in any week you want to. See you there.
All right, take care.